everyone, Howard Pinsky here with another Photoshop tutorial for all of you, where we're going to be taking a look at creating a chrome text effect using the new 3D features within Photoshop CS6 Extended. In this video, we're going to look at bringing your text into the third dimension, working with bevels, materials, and reflections to create the end result that you see here. Let's get to it. When starting out a 3D text design, you're going to start out like any other type-based project, with the Type tool. It's usually a good idea to set your type properties beforehand, but in Photoshop CS6, even after you've converted your text into a 3D mesh, you still have the ability to edit your type later on. From my experience, the thicker the font, the better. Once your text has been typed out, if your type layer is still active, the 3D button on the right side of the options bar will make the conversion into 3D. Otherwise, you can use the new 3D extrusion from selected layer option under the 3D menu. Now, if you've ever used the 3D features in Photoshop CS5, you're going to notice that everything is completely different in a very good way. I can simply click on the elements that I want modified, and right from within the workspace, I can move, rotate, or scale. As this video is focused on the text, let's click on the 3D text to select it. When a 3D layer is active, you're going to notice some helpful options within your Properties panel. If you don't see the Properties panel on your workspace, you can activate it under the Window menu at the top. One of the first options that's available to you is the Shape preset. This will allow you to add a bevel, inflation, or twists to your text. Each preset will give your text a different look, and they can also affect how your reflections look as well. Let's start off with a simple bevel for now. Down a bit further is the extrusion depth. This controls how thick or thin your text is. You're going to notice that as I increase and decrease the size of the extrusion, my text is becoming thicker and thinner. Finally, as I mentioned earlier, even after your text has been converted into a 3D mesh, it's still fully editable. You can very easily change the text base color using this color picker here. Or you can open up the character panel to gain access to many more text-based properties, such as the font, styles, leading, and so on. Of course, if you're not happy with what the actual text says, you can use the Edit Source option to edit the wording of your mesh. This works very similar to a Smart Object, where the type is contained within an internal document. So once you've made your edit, simply save the document, close it, and you'll see your updated mesh. Next, let's take a look at modifying the bevel a touch. At the top of the Properties panel, the third icon will allow you to make changes to the bevel and the inflation if you chose to add one. If you've ever added a bevel and embossed layer style, you may find this very familiar. The width will control how thick the bevel is, and the angle will allow you to pull the bevel away from the text or into the text to create an inset. Finally, just like when using a layer style, you can change the contour of the bevel, which can add extra ridges, and once you start toying with reflections, changing the contour can drastically change how your final result looks. I'm going to stick with the Cove contour and set the width around 45%. So now that we have the shape of the mesh set up, let's take a look at our materials. Each one is labeled accordingly, and when they become selected, they become highlighted on the mesh itself. You're certainly free to edit each mesh individually, but as this mesh will have similar properties throughout each material, we can easily edit all materials at once by selecting the first one, holding down Shift, and selecting the last one. Starting at the top in the Properties panel, the diffuse is basically the base color or texture of your mesh. This color picker is going to override the color you set earlier with the Type tool. For this design, I'm going to use a solid black for the mesh's color. Of course, if you wanted to use an image as a texture, you can load one in by clicking on the folder icon to the right. This option is only available when you have a single material selected. As we currently have multiple materials selected, this option is currently grayed out. Next is Specular. This will really come into play when you're dealing with reflections and lights that are hitting your mesh. If you're looking for strong reflections, you may want to increase the brightness of the specular. A very light gray is going to give us great results once we start adding reflections to our scene. Now, down below we have basic properties that will affect our mesh. Shine and reflection will be very important if you're looking for a chrome effect. You'll definitely want to increase the reflection value quite a bit, and then depending if you want the light spread out amongst your mesh or nice and tight, you can adjust the shine value accordingly. A higher value will tighten up the light, while a lower value will spread it out. Next, the roughness value may not appear to do much at first, but once you start working with image-based lights, which we're going to look at in a moment, increasing this value will help blur out your reflections if you don't want them so sharp. Let's set it around 10% to soften out our reflections. The rest of the properties we're not going to be touching, but if you wanted to add a tactile feel to your mesh, you can add a bump texture, you can adjust the opacity of your mesh, and adjust the refractions if you're working with transparent objects. At this point, let's give our scene a render to see how it's looking. This button right here will start the render process, which is going to smooth out your mesh, reflections, and shadows. Now, depending on which version of Photoshop CS6 that you're running, and the settings within your 3D preferences, you may see a large blue box, or you may see a smaller blue box that makes its way around your document. As you can see, the text is looking shiny, but is lacking in terms of reflections. Let's go ahead and stop the render by pressing the Escape key, and let's look at how image-based lights can help improve your results. Up in the environment properties, we can add and customize an image-based light, or IBL, which will usually help give your scene a more realistic look. If you're running Photoshop CS6 13.1, you're going to see the new default IBL, which is basically a few white boxes to help generate reflections. However, you can load in your own images to be used as the image-based light. If an IBL is already active, you can use the Replace option. Otherwise, a Load option will be available to you. For this design, I'm going to be using a stock image I grabbed from Shutterstock.com, and once it's been selected, you're going to see the image fill your screen. But don't worry, it's only there for preview purposes. Once you start rendering or select a different property, it'll hide itself. You also have the ability to rotate your image-based light, just in case you want a different area of the image reflected on your mesh. Now, instead of no reflections at all or simply white boxes, your image is now being reflected in the text, and if I give it a quick render, you're going to see it in action. Now keep in mind, when you start adding reflections or adjusting your mesh's opacity, render times can drastically increase, as there's a lot more that Photoshop has to put together. A little bit further down in our properties panel, we can also add a reflection to our ground plane, which is what our mesh is sitting on. Increasing the opacity will strengthen the visibility of the reflection, and increasing the roughness will soften it out. Another quick render will show you how the reflection on the ground plane is going to look. Of course, the longer you let the render go, the more Photoshop will be able to smooth out your reflections. And that just about covers it. Using the new 3D features within Photoshop CS6 Extended, you can create a pretty nice looking chrome text effect with the image of your choice as the reflection. I hope you all enjoyed it, and make sure to like this video, comment on it, and if you want to check out more Photoshop tutorials, check out my website at iceflowstudios.com. Take care.